Yeah, hey everyone. So I'm Tom from Ultrahaptics, one of the co-founders. And what we do is we create a technology that allows you to feel in midair. Shapes, objects, textures, all sorts of stuff. But what I really want to start talking about today is the different senses that you have available to you in VR and whether we're overlooking some of them. So we've got 5 senses. Audio and visual are obviously really key if you're going to go and start exploring virtual worlds. You need to be able to see and you need to be able to hear, which is why we have the goggles and the headphones. You then have taste, touch, and smell. Well, taste and smell are very interlinked. Your smell really affects your taste, and they're kind of an experiential rather than an essential sense. So you need taste and smell to get that extra layer of the environment that you're in, but they're not really fundamentally essential for exploring the environment and kind of being there and being immersed. So the last one is touch. And at a fundamental level, what is touch? Touch is a little bit of a not very well understood area. There are formal definitions. So haptic feedback is actually feedback for the sense of touch. And technically it's defined as actually 3 things rather than just what you may think of as touch. There's proprioception, kinesthesia, and tactile, which are big fancy words, but they mean pretty simple things. So proprioception is the location and the orientation of your limbs, where they are. Kinesthesia is the movement of your limbs, so what they're doing. And then tactile is the physical properties of the things that you're touching. So from the sense of touch, you really get where your body is, how it's orientated, what it's doing, and the physical properties of the world that it's interacting with. So it sounds kind of important, but we've spent an enormous amount of money and effort and time and R&D on better audio and better visual. And if you look at, in comparison, the amount we spent on haptic feedback and tactile, it's minuscule. It's almost virtually nothing. So the real question is, why do we put so much money into audio-visual and not a lot into tactile? And I have a theory as to why that is. So you can simulate the loss of all of your senses apart from touch. So you can simulate the loss of sight by covering your eyes or wearing a blindfold. You can simulate the loss of your hearing by wearing earplugs or covering your ears. And you can simulate the loss of your sense of taste and smell. You get this a lot when you get ill, you get a cold. So you know what it's like to lose them. You know that it's pretty awful to not have sight or not have sound. Taste and smell when you're ill is a pain, but you get by. But you genuinely can't lose your sense of touch. So you can fall asleep on your arm, and when you wake up, you've got a dead arm, but then you've got no motor control of that arm, as well as minimal feeling. You really cannot lose the sense of touch. And so you don't know what it's like not to have touch, and therefore it's quite difficult to value what you get from it. So I want to tell you a little story about a man called Waterman. So Waterman is one of a really, really small group of people who have lost their sense of touch but kept full motor control. So he went into a coma when he was 19 years old. He woke up 3 days later, completely lost the sense of touch. So he was unable, he had no idea where his limbs were, what they were doing, what he was touching. He was lying in a bed. He had no idea he was lying in a bed. He was just sort of this floating head in space. Unable to move or literally unable to control any of his limbs, unable to do anything. He couldn't sit up, nothing. So the doctor said that he'd be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life, but he's a pretty well-motivated guy. So he devised a really rigorous set of movement practice. So he would use purely visual feedback to watch his hands and do very small, very controlled movements, just repeatedly. And slowly over time, he relearned how to move by visual feedback and by memorizing the signals he's supposed to send to his hands. So all that stuff that's supposed to come from touch, he had to relearn through visuals. And I'm just going to play this little clip which shows you him talking. He's been doing this, by the way, for 30 years. You might notice he's not 19 anymore. So 30 years later, he's now able to move in... When you first look at him, he looks like he's been able to move normally, but it's taken 30 years of these really small training movements. So let's have a quick check.
Whenever I'm working with my hands or doing something with my hands, I'm not just looking and thinking about hands, I'm also attending to sound. Yeah. I mean, I can't get anything from my pocket because I can't feel it terribly well. I can't do something, I can't see. Often if someone passes me a cup, I would grab it awkwardly because I don't have the feedback of something coming from the fingertips saying you've actually picked up the cup incorrectly or taken it incorrectly.
So Ian still has no sense of touch, and so he still can't do a lot of really fundamental things. He can't use his pockets because he can't feel inside of his pockets. You saw there, if someone passes him a glass, if he can't see the other side of the glass, he doesn't know whether he's gripped it properly or whether he hasn't. If he interacts with physical objects in the real world and he touches them, he doesn't know whether he's touched them or whether he hasn't, other than through visual feedback. And you can see from scenes like this where he's trying to just to light a match, relying purely on visual and audio feedback to do simple tasks is really mentally demanding. He has to really concentrate in order to achieve this. And so my opinion is that no matter how much money and time and effort we spend making the best visuals and the best audio possible, and we will create some really awesome games, we'll never create this really complete immersion where you genuinely feel like you're there without having to really sort of concentrate really hard with what you're doing, what you're touching. If you don't have that physical feedback, it's really going to sort of break down the immersion. If you take the example of picking up a cup, yes, okay, you can't see the other hand, but also if you can't feel it, if your hand goes through the object, all of these situations where if you don't have the sense of touch, it's really going to start to break down the immersion of virtual reality. So this is really one of the main things that we're trying to solve at Ultrahaptics. So our technology allows you to feel things in midair. We can create sort of shapes, textures, and different sensations to give you that sense of touch back on your hand without any gloves, without any attachments, just all completely in midair. So this is an example of a force field where there's some kind of barrier that you can put your hand through, and you can feel this force field just kind of floating in the air. It's obviously pretty difficult to explain from pictures because you can't actually see it, but the real coolest way to experience it is to see people's reactions when they try it for the first time. So what we did, we took a demo, we actually took this force field, and we set it up downstairs at Bristol as an exhibit, and then we just left it there. We told people, there's a force field, come and play with it, and got them to come and walk up and put their hands in it, not expecting to feel anything, and get this first experience of being able to feel without touching. So I just want to show you what they thought. Lost a laptop making that video. Punching it, I was this far from the screen, but it was worth it. So how does their technology actually work? Well, this is pretty much the simplest way I can explain it. We use ultrasound. So you can't see it, you can't hear it, and we have a collection of little speakers, and what we're doing is we're focusing the sound waves onto your hand, and where they focus, where that little red dot appears at the top, we can actually push your hand with enough force that we can just use it to vibrate the skin. And then we can create different vibrations to create different textures, different sensations. So we've got a bunch of cool demos out the back for you to try later. We've got virtual bubbles floating up that you can pop. We've got a force field that you can put your hand through. We've got a game of Pong, because Pong is cool. And we've got a touchless dial, so you can control devices where you hold your hand out and the controls will stick to your hand rather than you having to find and locate them themselves. So these are all great and great fun. But I also wanted to share something with you just now. We've recently started work on full 3D shapes. So we don't just have to create points or lines or planes. We can actually create full 3D shapes as well. We're pretty early stage with this, so it's not sort of being rolled out and demoed. But we've made a bunch of primitive shapes. We actually ran a user study where we got people in to play with, there were 6 different shapes: cube, sphere, pyramid, cone, with no visuals, getting them to come up, feel it, and identify what it is. And they were really, really accurate with doing it as well. So the technology is going well and it's going places. So I think this is going to be one of the most useful things for VR, having these sort of different shapes and objects and textures that are floating there and you can feel. And I just wanted to give you a quick video demonstration of what this kind of looks like, because obviously you can't see it. So what we've got here, this is actually a sphere being dunked into an oil bath. And so you can see the depressions on the oil bath as you dunk it in and out. And then so this is 3 different shapes being sort of half dunked in and spun round. It's like a super quick way of being able to visualize what's happening. You kind of see it as like a dotty line, but when you actually feel it, your hand can't discern quite such discrete points, so you feel a nice smooth circle or sphere as you can put your hand in and out and explore it. So my big hope is that in the future you'll be able to put on your virtual reality headset, your super thin glasses that can do VR and AR, you can get the really good audio, but you'll also get some kind of sense of touch as you reach out and explore the virtual worlds. And we're only at the very beginning of that journey. We've only existed as a company for a year, and we've only recently started work on 3D shapes. But we would really love to make a cool VR demo with shapes that you can reach out and touch and feel. And so we thought the best way of doing that is reaching out to the VR community. So we are looking to engage with someone from the VR community to come in and work with us and make this cool little demo and teaser. And as I said, we've got a whole bunch of demos out the back there, so come and have a play and come and have a chat. And I'll take any questions.
Brilliant, thanks so much for that, really interesting. We've already had a hand shoot up at the back and he's already got a mic, so.
Hello. Hi, so the last gentleman was speaking about AR. I wonder, to me this seems like an even more natural thing for AR UI. If we think about the science fiction kind of hard light, you have a UI that you can just reach out and touch. Have you explored that at all?
Yeah, so we've not made any demos, but it's certainly something we've explored. One of the really cool, probably like first mover things in AI with mid-air touch, you have a lot of manufacturing where you've got to, say, build an engine and you've got to position parts in the right places and not touch certain dangerous elements. So AR is really useful there in giving you visual information. You know, you don't need some kind of user manual over here. You just see it in front of your vision as you work. And so being able to also have touch with that can guide your hand to the right place or make you avoid. Virtual keyboards is something that everybody seems to want. It's certainly something that's possible, and we can do it. We can target feedback to your fingertip. We've not made it properly yet because I have a feeling that your arms are going to ache if you're trying to hold it in the air and type. But yeah, certainly something that could be really interesting.
Nice one, brilliant. And a question down the front.
I'm just so excited, so much to discover and ask, and I just can't keep my mouth shut. So the question is about the sensors. The ultrasonic sensors are relatively large. So is it always going to be some kind of like sort of business to business or arcade solution which needs lots of space?
No, not at all. So the device which you might have seen on there and you'll see on our stall is quite a big device, but it's our evaluation platform. So it's meant to be really flexible for doing all sorts of crazy stuff. It's got a range of over 1 meter, but we're moving to smaller and smaller platforms all the time. For the majority of applications, you don't need a device that big. We also have new ultrasound sensors, ultrasound speakers that are a 40th of the size, so they're only 1 millimeter thick. They're designed to go in smartphones and tablets and portable devices. So yeah, it's going to be a whole lot smaller and be embedded in your devices. So.
Great. Any more questions at all? Yeah, there's an arm up over there. I don't know where the microphone's gone. It's coming over. Yeah, sorry, over here to your right.
Will this technology ever be able to provide enough force feedback to stop a user's hand?
No. It's always going to be sort of texture and information. It's never going to be able to resist your hand.
Cool.
Nice one, and you've done well. You've got a lot of questions. There's another one over just about there. Fantastic.
As well as creating shapes for people to feel, are your sensors able to detect proximity? so that then you can interact with the scene?
Yeah, absolutely. So you sort of saying some kind of tactile information before you actually touch something.
Yeah, and then being able to move shapes or objects within the VR scene.
Yeah. So if you want some kind of tactile information that you're approaching something, you can create like the only thing in the real world I can think of off the top of my head is if you approach something that's like high voltage and static, and you get that kind of feeling in the air before you get close to it. We can adjust the strength and the amplitude of the feedback, so you could get something that's sort of quite a weak, fuzzy feeling that gets stronger and more defined as you approach towards it. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Oh, you might be here all day, I'm afraid. You've already seen him, the chap in the blue shirt. I can't see any other hands.
Hi.
Oh, okay. So if we go for that one first of all, then we'll come back to you. Sorry, I should learn to stand not staring into the light.
Can the constructive ultrasonic waves converge through the skin?
They could do. So the ultrasound waves that we use at the moment, we select them so that they are entirely reflected off the surface of your skin. That's hugely beneficial for us for two reasons. The first is that you generate the force through the reflection, so that's why it pushes the skin. And the second is that you probably don't want it being absorbed into the skin on a regular basis. So.
And the chap behind the pillar patiently waiting, fire away.
Sorry. Could I ask about competing technologies? Do you investigate competing technologies like compressed air and things like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, the company and myself actually, we originated from a human-computer interaction lab at Bristol University. So we came from sort of the research space. There's only ever been 3 technologies that can make you feel without touch. The first is air jets, but they disperse very, very quickly, so you can't create any kind of detailed sort of texture or feedback with them at any great distance. And by great distance, I mean more than about 5 centimeters. The other is air vortices, so a bit like the toys you can buy, like for kids, big blue barrels where you pull the back and let go, and it fires sort of like a ball of air at people. But they're not continuous, really big and clunky, and you can't create texture with them. Again, you can only just create a sort of a one-off force. In terms of our stuff, we are currently the only people we know of doing this, and the companies that we talk to say the same thing. I'm sure there's people hidden in a lab somewhere trying to whip something up. But
fantastic. I think as time is running out, we better call that it and let Tom leave the stage. But I want to ask you some questions as well, so I'll have to see you later. But thanks so much.